The crisp autumn night was unusually quiet on the outskirts of Windmere, a small farming town nestled at the edge of a sprawling forest. The moon hung low and full, casting a pale light over the frost-covered fields and dirt paths. Eliza Markham, a veterinarian in her late 30s, stood in her barn with a growing sense of unease. Her prized horse, Blaze, had bolted into the night without warning. Blaze was no ordinary horse. A striking chestnut mare with a white blaze running down her face and powerful, graceful legs, she was the heart of Eliza's small farm. Blaze had been with Eliza for 5 years. Ever since Eliza rescued her from a neglectful owner, the bond they shared was unbreakable, or so Eliza thought. Tonight, something had spooked Blaze enough for her to tear away from her paddock, disappearing into the dark. Before we continue with the video and dive deeper into the incredible story of Blaze and her extraordinary connection with Lila, I want to ask for your help. I'm aiming to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and your support would mean the world to me. If you've been enjoying this content, please hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. And let me know where you're watching from in the comments down below. All right, let's jump back into the story. Eliza paced the barn, gripping a lantern in one hand and Blaze's reins in the other. "I don't understand," she muttered to herself. "She's never done this before." Her younger brother Nathan leaned against the barn door, his breath visible in the chilly air. "Maybe something startled her," he suggested, though his voice betrayed doubt. "Coyotes, maybe?" Eliza shook her head. "Blaze is braver than that. I've seen her face down storms without flinching. This feels different." Determined to find her, Eliza bundled herself in a thick coat, boots, and gloves, then grabbed a flashlight and her saddlebag filled with supplies. "Stay here in case she finds her way back," she instructed Nathan, who nodded reluctantly. With her dog Scout, a wiry blue heeler with boundless energy, trotting beside her, Eliza set off down the dirt path leading toward the woods. The night was eerily silent, save for the crunch of her boots on the frosted ground and Scout's occasional sniffs at the air. Blaze's hoofprints were faint but visible in the moonlight, heading straight for the dense trees that marked the edge of the forest. Eliza hesitated. The forest was vast and notoriously difficult to navigate at night. Even locals rarely ventured into it after dark. But Blaze was out there, and Eliza couldn't bear the thought of losing her. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the forest, the beam of her flashlight cutting through the thick shadows. The woods were alive with subtle sounds, leaves rustling in the wind, the distant hoot of an owl, the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. Scout stayed close to Eliza, his ears twitching at every noise. The hoofprints led deeper into the woods, winding around trees and through patches of undergrowth. Eliza followed them with a mix of determination and growing unease. "Blaze!" she called, her voice echoing faintly through the trees. "Blaze, where are you?" Scout barked once, then stood still, his body tense. Eliza paused, shining her flashlight in the direction of Scout's gaze. In the distance, she caught a glimpse of movement, a flash of chestnut against the dark backdrop of the forest. Relief flooded her chest. "There you are," Eliza murmured, quickening her pace. But Blaze didn't stop. The mare was moving with purpose, her powerful strides carrying her deeper into the woods. It was almost as if she was leading Eliza somewhere. Confused but resolute, Eliza pushed on, calling Blaze's name and trying to close the distance. The chase continued for what felt like hours. Eliza stumbled over roots and rocks, her flashlight flickering ominously as the batteries began to weaken. But Blaze remained just out of reach, her movements fluid and unwavering. Scout stayed close, his keen senses alerting Eliza to every shift in the forest around them. Finally, the trees began to thin, and Eliza emerged into a clearing, bathed in moonlight. The sight before her took her breath away. Blaze stood in the center of the clearing, her chestnut coat glowing in the pale light. She was completely still, her head raised and ears alert. But she wasn't alone. Eliza's heart skipped a beat as she noticed a small, huddled figure lying in the grass near Blaze's hooves. As she stepped closer, she realized it was a child, a young girl, no older than 7 or 8, wrapped in a tattered blanket. "Blaze, what have you found?" Eliza whispered, rushing forward. The girl stirred as Eliza knelt beside her, her eyes fluttering open. They were wide with fear and confusion, but she didn't cry. Instead, she looked up at Blaze, who nuzzled her gently with her nose as if to reassure her. "It's okay," Eliza said softly, her voice calm and steady. "You're safe now." Scout wagged his tail, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, while Blaze stood protectively over the girl, her eyes never leaving Eliza. "Where did you come from?" Eliza asked gently, wrapping the girl in a spare blanket from her saddlebag. The girl didn't respond, her small body trembling in the cold. Eliza's mind raced with questions. Who was this child? How had she ended up in the forest alone? And how had Blaze, of all creatures, found her? With the girl bundled securely in her arms, Eliza turned to Blaze, stroking her neck. "You knew, didn't you?" she murmured. The mare nickered softly, her breath visible in the chilly air. Eliza had no time to ponder the mystery further. The girl needed warmth and safety, and the forest was no place to linger. Placing the girl on Blaze's broad back, Eliza led them out of the clearing, Scout trailing close behind. As they made their way back toward the farm, Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that this night was only the beginning of something extraordinary. By the time Eliza returned to the farm, dawn was beginning to break, painting the horizon with hues of pink and gold. Blaze walked steadily, the girl swaying gently on her back, bundled in layers of blankets. Scout trotted alongside, his sharp eyes scanning the path for any sign of danger. Eliza, exhausted but resolute, was too consumed with questions to feel the ache in her legs. Nathan burst out of the barn as they approached, his eyes widening at the sight of the girl. "Eliza, who's that? What happened?" he asked, rushing to help. "I don't know," Eliza admitted, carefully lifting the girl off Blaze's back. "Blaze found her out in the forest. She's freezing and hasn't said a word." Nathan looked at Blaze, who stood nearby with an air of calm protectiveness. "You're saying Blaze led you to her?" Eliza nodded. "It's like she knew exactly where the girl was. I can't explain it." Nathan helped Eliza carry the girl into the farmhouse, where they gently placed her on the couch by the fire. Eliza retrieved a mug of warm milk and held it to the girl's lips, encouraging her to sip. Slowly, color began to return to her pale cheeks. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Eliza asked softly, brushing a strand of hair from the girl's face. The girl blinked up at her, but didn't answer. Her wide brown eyes held a mix of fear and exhaustion. Nathan frowned. Think she's in shock? Maybe, Eliza replied, or she could be too scared to talk. Either way, we need to call the sheriff and let him know what's happened. While Nathan placed the call, Eliza stayed by the girl's side, speaking to her in soothing tones. Blaze stood just outside the window, occasionally nickering softly, as if checking on the child. It was clear the horse felt a connection to her, one that Eliza couldn't fully understand. The sheriff, a burly man named Deputy Russ Carter, arrived an hour later, his patrol car kicking up dust as it rolled into the driveway. He stepped out, his broad-brimmed hat shielding his eyes from the morning sun. "Morning, Eliza." "Nathan," Russ greeted, his deep voice calm but authoritative. His gaze shifted to the girl who was sitting upright now, still wrapped in blankets. "So this is the little one?" Eliza nodded. "Blaze found her in the forest last night. She hasn't said a word, but she seems unharmed, just cold and frightened." Russ crouched down to the girl's level, his tone gentle. "Hey there, sweetheart. My name's Russ. I'm here to help you. Can you tell me your name?" The girl stared at him for a long moment before finally murmuring, "Lila." Eliza's heart swelled with relief. "Lila," she repeated softly. "That's a beautiful name." Russ smiled. "Lila, do you know where your parents are or where you came from?" Lila shook her head, her small fingers clutching the blanket tightly. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't cry. Instead, she glanced toward the window where Blaze was standing. The sight of the horse seemed to calm her, and she whispered, "The big horse. She saved me." Eliza exchanged a glance with Russ, who raised an eyebrow. "Seems like Blaze deserves a medal," he said with a chuckle. Then his tone turned serious. "We need to figure out where Lila came from. I'll radio in and see if there's a missing child report." Russ stepped outside to make the call, leaving Eliza and Nathan with Lila. Scout curled up at the girl's feet, his tail wagging slightly when she hesitantly reached down to pet him. The gesture was small, but it spoke volumes about her growing sense of safety. When Russ returned, his expression was grim. "There's no report of a missing child matching Lila's description in the area," he said. "I'll expand the search and see if any neighboring counties have anything. In the meantime, it's probably best if she stays here with you, Eliza." "Of course," Eliza replied immediately. "She's welcome here as long as she needs." Russ nodded. "Good. I'll be in touch as soon as I have any updates." As the day wore on, Lila began to open up, bit by bit. She told Eliza and Nathan that she didn't remember how she ended up in the forest. "It was dark," she said quietly. "I heard something chasing me, but then I saw the big horse. She was so calm, and I wasn't scared anymore." Eliza listened intently, her mind racing. What could have been chasing Lila? A predator? A person? And how had Blaze known to find her? Later that afternoon, Eliza decided to take Blaze for a ride. She wanted to revisit the clearing and see if there were any clues they had missed. Lila insisted on coming along, her small hand gripping Blaze's reins as they led her out of the paddock. "You really like Blaze, huh?" Eliza asked, smiling as she watched Lila stroke the mare's neck. Lila nodded. "She's special." As they reached the clearing, Eliza dismounted and began searching the area for anything unusual. Scout sniffed around, his ears perked. Lila stayed close to Blaze, her gaze darting nervously toward the shadows of the trees. Eliza's heart sank as she found no definitive answers. The forest was quiet, its secrets hidden beneath layers of leaves and undergrowth. But then Scout barked, his tail wagging furiously as he pawed at the ground near the edge of the clearing. Eliza hurried over, her breath catching as she spotted what Scout had uncovered, a small backpack partially buried in the dirt. She carefully opened it, finding a few crumpled snacks, a water bottle, and a torn map. "Lila," Eliza called gently, "is this yours?" Lila hesitated, then nodded. "I think so," she whispered. I was walking for a long time before I saw the big horse." Eliza's chest tightened. The backpack confirmed that Lila had been lost for some time, but it didn't explain where she had come from or why she had been alone in the first place. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Eliza knew they had to head back. But as they prepared to leave, Lila turned to Blaze and said softly, "Thank you for finding me." The mare lowered her head, nuzzling Lila gently as if she understood every word. Eliza watched the interaction, a strange sense of awe washing over her. Blaze had always been intelligent and empathetic, but this felt different. It felt purposeful. Back at the farm, Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Blaze's connection with Lila than met the eye. She resolved to keep searching for answers, even as Lila began to settle into life on the farm. Little did she know, the events of the next few days would reveal a truth that would change everything. Over the next few days, Lila began to open up more, finding comfort in the rhythm of life on the farm. Blaze had become her constant companion, and it wasn't unusual to find the mare standing protectively near Lila while she played in the yard. Scout, too, seemed to have taken on the role of guardian, always keeping a watchful eye on the little girl. Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that there was a deeper connection between Blaze and Lila. The way Blaze responded to the girl was unlike anything Eliza had ever seen, even in the mare's long history of loyalty and intelligence. The pieces of the puzzle remained scattered, but Eliza was determined to put them together. One afternoon, as Lila was brushing Blaze's coat under Eliza's supervision, Nathan came running from the house, holding a phone in his hand. "Eliza, Russ just called. He found something." Eliza's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" "He tracked down a missing person report from a county 2 hours away. A family there reported their daughter missing over 2 weeks ago. She matches Lila's description." Lila, hearing her name, stopped brushing and turned toward Nathan. "My family?" she asked hesitantly. Eliza knelt beside her, her voice soft. "We think so, sweetheart. We're going to find out more, okay?" Lila nodded but didn't speak. Her grip on Blaze's brush tightened, as if the mare's presence grounded her. Russ arrived shortly after, bringing a folder with him. Inside were photos and details about the missing family, John and Meredith Porter, a young couple who lived on the edge of a national forest. Lila was their only child. According to the report, the family had been on a camping trip when Lila disappeared. Search parties had combed the area for days, but there had been no trace of her. "Her parents are desperate to see her," Russ explained. "I've spoken to them, and they're on their way now. They should be here by tomorrow morning." Eliza glanced at Lila, who was now leaning against Blaze, her small hand resting on the mare's neck. "Do they know what happened to her?" Russ shook his head. "No. They said they went to bed one night, and when they woke up, she was gone. They thought she might have wandered off, but no one could explain how she could have gotten so far so quickly. The mystery deepened. Eliza couldn't imagine how Lila had survived alone in the forest for so long, and yet here she was, alive and seemingly unharmed, thanks to Blaze. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Eliza sat with Lila on the porch steps. Blaze grazed nearby, her black coat shimmering in the fading light. "Lila," Eliza began gently, "do you remember anything about your family, or what happened before Blaze found you?" Lila frowned, her small brow furrowing as she tried to recall. "I remember my mom and dad," she said slowly. "We were camping, and it was dark. I heard something outside the tent, like a growl. I got scared." Eliza listened intently, her heart pounding. "I ran out to look, but then I got lost," Lila continued. Her voice wavered as tears filled her eyes. "It was so cold and quiet, I didn't know where to go." Eliza wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. "You were very brave, Lila." Lila wiped her tears and glanced toward Blaze. "I thought I was going to be lost forever, but then I saw Blaze. She found me." Eliza's chest tightened. How had Blaze known to find Lila in the middle of the forest? It was as if the mare had been guided by something beyond instinct, something Eliza couldn't explain. The next morning, John and Meredith Porter arrived at the farm. They were a young, earnest couple, their faces etched with weeks of worry and sleepless nights. When they saw Lila, their emotions overflowed. "Lila!" Meredith cried, running toward her daughter and scooping her into her arms. "Oh, my baby, we've missed you so much." Lila clung to her mother, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy! Daddy!" John knelt beside them, his voice trembling. "We thought we'd lost you, sweetheart." Eliza and Nathan stood back, watching the tearful reunion with a mixture of joy and relief. Russ was there too, his hat in hand, his expression softened by the scene. As the family embraced, Blaze stood nearby, her ears twitching. Lila turned toward the mare and pointed. "Blaze saved me," she said firmly. "She found me in the forest." Meredith and John exchanged a puzzled glance, and Eliza stepped forward to explain. She recounted how Blaze had led her to the clearing where Lila had been found, and how the mare had seemed to know exactly where to go. "She's an incredible animal," Eliza said, her voice filled with admiration. "I don't know how she knew, but she did." John approached Blaze cautiously, extending a hand. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice filled with gratitude. Blaze nickered and lowered her head, allowing him to stroke her velvety nose. For the rest of the morning, the Porters shared their story. They described the days leading up to Lila's disappearance, their frantic search efforts, and their devastation when the trail went cold. "We couldn't understand how she got so far," Meredith said. "But now, hearing about Blaze, it feels like a miracle." Before they left, Lila insisted on saying goodbye to Blaze. She wrapped her arms around the mare's neck, whispering something only the two of them could hear. Blaze stood perfectly still, her dark eyes filled with an understanding that went beyond words. As the Porters drove away, Eliza watched them go, her heart heavy with a mix of emotions. She was overjoyed that Lila had been reunited with her family, but she couldn't help feeling a pang of sadness at the thought of saying goodbye. Blaze whinnied softly, and Eliza turned to her, stroking her mane. "You did something amazing, girl," she said. "I don't know how, but you saved her." In the days that followed, life on the farm returned to its usual rhythm, but Eliza often found herself reflecting on the events that had unfolded. Blaze's actions had been nothing short of extraordinary, and they had forever changed the lives of everyone involved. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, Eliza stood in the pasture watching Blaze graze. She thought about the bond she shared with her horse and the inexplicable connection that had led Blaze to Lila. "Some things," Eliza murmured, "we're just not meant to understand." Blaze lifted her head, her gaze meeting Eliza's. In that moment, it felt as though the mare agreed, her calm presence a reminder of the extraordinary power of intuition, love, and loyalty.